Hello and welcome to the Armchair QBs. I'm your host Calum Buchan. Alongside me is Dan Cameron, and that is week one in the bag. Dan, are you happy football's back?
So happy. I'm so happy. It was a good week, wasn't it?
It was actually. I was surprised. I thought the play was much better than what I expected it to be, given that there was no pre-season and very limited contact. I really thought most of the offenses were kind of on point. I don't know what your takeaway was.
I think that it's going to increase. You're saying that the play was good. Chris Collinsworth was saying that the Sunday night game between Dallas and the Rams was good. I still think that some teams will regress, some teams will get better. It's week one. Let's just all calm down with our hot takes and just kind of try and use what's been happening on Sunday and Monday as indications rather than definitive trends already.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we preached last week in our picks episode, and I think we need to keep that mentality, and you're very right to bring that back up, I think, for the next probably 4 weeks before everything beds in properly.
Yeah, we'll do a State of the Union, State of the NFL around about 4 weeks in, then we'll be able to properly kind of, say who the villains are and say who the potential heroes are.
Yeah, I think that'll be quite a good idea for an episode. Let's just recap quickly what went on. We'll go through all the scores, but then spend some time on some teams, and we'll be looking at a couple of games a bit more in depth. So let's kick off with what happened on Monday. Titans defeated the Broncos in a very sloppy game. After we had just said that the play had been good, Gostowski, the villain in this one with all his missed kicks. A very, very sloppy game, and not really had much time to analyse it myself. I don't know about you, Dan, but we expected Tennessee to win, and
you did. I picked Denver, and that was before the Von Miller news, and so I then immediately called a mulligan and said I wasn't having it, because it immediately went from Denver being 1 point favourites to 2.5 underdogs. So no, I'm having that, even though you're saying that I can't have it. So the picks that I have out of last week are out at 15, and that's just what's happening. All right. So I think there's the things to take away from this are that Bill Belichick knew that Gostkowski was finished. He got out early, as he always does. No, that's unfair, you know what I mean? But thank God he managed to kick that final one to get the win for them, because if not, I mean, I don't think he'd be getting on the plane. He'd be getting the Lane Kiffin treatment. And the second thing to take away is that Vic Fangio is still very much a new head coach despite his senior years. I think he's still kind of getting to grips with some of the game management decisions. And again, it's week one. Let's not peg it. Denver seemed okay, but nothing more than that. And they really need to kind of make sure that they don't have the similar play like they did last year from the defense, where they were terrible through the first 8 weeks and then progressively got better towards the end of the season. They need to try and start off on a better view. So yeah, not much to say about the late Monday night game, but certainly I don't think you get a lot of credit for picking the Titans after essentially most of the Broncos were injured.
I picked them before the injuries, but so I will take my credit, my victory lap. In the other Monday night game, we had the Steelers handling the Giants. I think that Steelers defense looks legit. I think they're going to be a problem all year. And also, I just loved having Fowler and Herbstreit going a Monday night football game.
Yeah, no, I kind of caught the game before, and I'll tell you what, only Kirk and Herbstreit could probably bring that kind of college enthusiasm to a Monday night football game, something that seems to have been lacking from the broadcast booth for a couple of years since Gruden left, and they've tried different combinations to try and get it. But strange with it being so empty, but I tell you what, only Jason Garrett could destroy Saquon Barkley.
Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. How can you end up with that stat line? It was just, I mean, like you say, I've not watched the full game of it yet. I need to go back and see what went wrong there for Barkley, or if it was just the Steelers line being that good.
Yeah, no, well, we said in our kind of division previews that for the majority of the NFC East, the question was terrible offensive line and how is the coaching going to overcome it? And so you've got Saquon Barkley, a potential all-time talent, will say 15 carries for only 6 yards. I mean, that's got to come down to a bit of the offensive line and a bit of the coaching as to being unable to kind of, identify the difficulties you have and then play to your strengths and scheme it up. So he did that. The other thing that we've got to consider in relation to New York is there's a number of 3-and-outs. And also a lot of long drives with absolutely no production. I mean, his old team Dallas went 8 plays for 80 yards in about 2 minutes the other night, and yet New York went 19 plays for 87 yards, took 8.5 minutes off the clock, and ended up with no points. So if that's an indication of things to come for New York, I've already had a message from our unnamed friend as of yet saying, well, that's 1 down, just 6 to go. We're on kind of like 0-7 watch for the New York Giants. Pittsburgh a bit uneven, but I'm really excited about Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool. Add James Washington into that. You can't get them all on the field at the same time, probably, but maybe they'll try it. Why not? But certainly, Big Ben seems to be back, and I'm keen to see how the Steelers are going to progress. As long as they don't win the division, as long as they don't beat the Ravens. Is that fair enough?
Yeah. I mean, I had put Pittsburgh down as my wild horse for the AFC contention. But
we're really bad for misnaming cliches. Wild horse.
Wild horse.
Yeah,
I don't
wild
care.
horse, dark hair, we'll call it.
Yeah, we'll call it that. Let's move on. The Sunday night game, Jason Garrett's old team, Cowboys, went down to the Rams. I thought the Rams looked very crisp. I don't know if this is them back on track. I don't think it's sustainable because that NFC West is just such a tough division. So I don't really want to read too much into anything. The only solid thing I'm taking away from this game is that Aaron Donald is an absolute monster.
Difficult to peg this one. I mean, in the run-up to Sunday night, there was a lot of comments going about Twitter about how the market had pegged this wrong and that it shouldn't be a 3-point favourite to Dallas and such alike, and that there was a lot of sharp money coming in on the Rams. And look, that ended up being true. But one thing I say about Dallas is that I was surprised about how they weren't pushing the ball down the field as much as I expected with the personnel that they've got and what we discussed in our season preview. So Dak threw the ball 39 times, and they ran the ball 27 times. And I think they need to have a little bit more balance and be able to get back to that running game to allow them to get some shots down the field. I think you're right. Los Angeles looked. They looked crisp. That motion game, that run off it. It's when it's working the way that it did against that Dallas defense, who picked up a few knocks. It has to be said, but they definitely said that they're not the Rams of last season if they continue this performance that they'd put in week 1.
Well, what I would say about the Rams is, if you look at their starting 11s on offense and defense, I think you'll struggle to find a more talented team. The problem, they've obviously paid a lot of guys. The problem comes if anybody gets injured. Their depth behind those 11s is, it's like going off a cliff. I think they have to hope that they just stay healthy all year. If they pick up any kind of injuries to key positions, it will submarine them quicker than it would most other teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think every single player there has a very, very defined role, and it's almost a very limited role because of the speed that they play at and the kind of pre-snap motion and how they set up. And so they get a lot of substitution through that. But again, certain players for certain roles doing certain things. And you're right, if a couple of those get knocked and you get some players in which aren't as familiar with it, have to try and get up to speed, having not been with the team for a while, then that could be the case. I was surprised that Cam Akers wasn't as explosive as I expected him to be. I am putting that down to some rookie jitters, and Malcolm Brown, the big kind of bowling back CJ Anderson clone, did a lot more for them on the ground. So still a kind of a wee work in progress, but it looked as though they were back at their kind of 11 personnel best, rather than messing around with too many tight ends and such like.
Okay, let's move on to I, I don't know. I don't want to call this the upset of the day, but it was certainly a surprising scoreline. Arizona 24, San Francisco 20. Arizona, I think, just came out the gates. They ran. I think it ended up being around 20 plays more than San Francisco when I looked at the breakdown. Obviously, they were using DeAndre Hopkins quite a lot.
Well, not a lot, not a lot. I mean, there was an immense amount.
Yeah, an immense amount. I think they were very smart in how they used them. We had talked.
Well, put into focus how immense DeAndre Hopkins was in his production for that team. There was 7 players who caught passes for the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. The other 6 combined didn't even eclipse DeAndre Hopkins' 14 receptions.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be the stat this week that I'm going to use a lot when I'm talking about quarterbacks. Right. So Kyler Murray, if you look at his stat line, he ended up with 230 yards, which is pretty good. His air yards, though, 97. So the bulk of those yards were all made on yards after catch. And you kind of saw it with DeAndre Hopkins and a lot of the production that he was making. But I think that's also, you can attribute that also to the offense that Cliff Kingsbury is running. I just thought they looked very explosive. I really enjoyed rewatching that game. And I know it's week 1, we're trying to temper expectations as much as possible, but I think Arizona are going to be the sneaky second screen team that you keep on just to have a look at, because I think that offense could be really exciting this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, the run game wasn't, what it was towards the last season. I don't think you can say that it was a sneaky. We were saying in our preview show for week 1 that we thought the Cards, definitely had a chance of taking the spread on this game. And that certainly came true. But until Garoppolo threw that final pick, we thought we were going to be bang on with the 49ers winning, but the Cardinals covering the spread. I actually honestly thought the stat you were going to mention was the fact that DeAndre Hopkins also had more receptions than all of the Texans combined as well. So, but we didn't manage to get that.
No, thank you.
Well,
thank you.
It was going to happen. It was going to happen sooner or later. Just the order that we seem to be doing this seems to make it more apparent now. So yeah, again, I don't trust Vance Joseph at all. Isaiah Simmons was exposed for the Mostert touchdown, which was a relatively simple kind of, angle Texas route out the backfield, and he just over pursued it, and then Mostert ran away from him. But they seem to pick on him a little bit every so often, San Francisco, which is what Kyle Shanahan does. He loves picking on those interior defenders and getting those matchups right. So it was a loss for San Francisco, but again, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to start being better sooner rather than later, because chat's already happened after week 1 that because of his limited cap hit, they can move on from him after the end of this year. And there are going to be quarterbacks available at the end of this year that Kyle Shanahan would be quite happy to go get.
Okay, moving on. The Buccaneers against the Saints. Saints winning that one 34-23. I don't really want to read too much into this. I think there were a couple of issues for Tom Brady, Mike Evans being hurt, again going into a completely new offense. I don't want to overreact to this at all, really, to be honest. I think it was 2 good teams in the NFC South facing off against each other, and one of the big factors for Tampa Bay was injured and limited. So I'm waiting until after week 4 before I make my judgment on this Tampa Bay experiment.
Please stop calling that. Until they win a game, you're not allowed to call them Tampa Bay, all right?
Okay.
I am worried for Tampa Bay already. And again, we are being calm, not overreacting, but he's still struggling to come to terms with some of the reads. And it was quite apparent from Sunday that the thing I've been wondering about all season, and people who have stuck with us and listened to us since episode 1 will be sick of me saying it, but it's if Sunday's an indication of the offense going forward, they are running Bruce Arians' scheme with Tom Brady rather than Tom Brady running what he was good at in New England. And even though he's got the personnel to run it, I'm worried about that, and it means that Tom Brady is potentially going to have a rough start to the season if that's the way it is, because Arians has already said in his post-game interview that Brady was at fault for the
interceptions.
For the interceptions. So that's something that he would have been chewed out for privately by Bill Belichick in the QB room, which was, everybody said that's why he kind of wanted to get out. He wanted to be coached, but he wanted to get away from the kind of constant criticism of Belichick in the QB room. But he's now getting it publicly from Bruce Arians, who, despite being a relationships guy, is he's taking Bruce Arians. He's going to do what the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
So Drew Brees was a bit of an issue as well. I thought so. Not a good day overall for that. But if that's New Orleans on a bad day scoring 34 points, it could be worrying if that's them going to how they're going to play if they're firing on all cylinders.
I mean, that defense, it's pretty good. I think they've got probably the best 1-2 combination at corner, and I think that will help them a lot.
For those unaware, that's Marshawn Lattimore, Janoris Jenkins, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying those are the two best corners in the league, but I think if you have just the depth there, but you have a good number one and a good number two, there's normally a bit of a drop off at your number two corner. But I think that's the best secondary. Let's move on. Chargers beat the Bengals 16-3. I mean, this was a game I just wanted to see what was happening with Joe Burrow. Not much, really. It was a bit of a flat game.
I disagree. I think that he showed what we discussed in the run-up to the draft when we discussed LSU Alabama in that focus episode. He's got the poise, he's got the understanding, he's got the accuracy, and he showed that. But what was maybe perhaps a little bit lacking was, and I'm not going to say the supporting cast because he seems to have picked up a relatively good relationship with AJ Green already, but I thought the Chargers were there for the taking, and they were. And when Randy Bullock pulled a Calum Buchan, and you know what I mean by that.
Slander, sir.
Right, okay, yeah. I mean, how you ever let a kicker be on your team in that state, I'm not quite sure. He is just basically a guy out of a truck stop who's pulled into, kick balls, and I can tell you what,
I mean, as a Texan fan, I've had to put up with Randy Bullock. So I knew exactly what they were getting when he came out.
But Joe Burrow's face when that kick went wide right was essentially, welcome to the Bengals, Joe. You can enjoy training camp all you want and being the number one draft pick, but this is how you lose game as a Bengal. Well, we'll have to wait and see. But I thought there was some encouragement from the way that he played. No,
I think there were some good signs. There were some things which, when I watched it, I think my doubts about Joe Burrow disappeared. I was, I had kind of taken the harder stance of he'd only done it 1 year, and I thought he was more of a system QB. But after watching it, he continued everything that he was doing from LSU, all the good. Now my worry is Zach Taylor the right person to take Joe Burrow on?
You've got a real dislike for Zach Taylor.
I'm just throwing it out there. It's my early take.
No, I appreciate it, and I can understand that. Basically he was just within touching distance of Sean McVay, and so that's why he got the job and such like. But one thing that we can say about this Cincinnati game is that they incorporated elements of what Joe Burrow did well at LSU with the RPOs and such like, and so that was essentially just lifted and planted straight into Cincinnati's offense from LSU. So that's good, and that's exactly what you should be doing. The Bengals have got other difficulties than Joe Burrow, the offensive line, and essentially the whole defense. So, but this was a game there for the taking against the Chargers team, who, quite frankly, were really underwhelming, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. One thing I'm just going to throw out, right, and put this in your back pocket. If Carolina keep doing well on offense, don't be surprised if they sack Zach Taylor and Joe Brady gets put in.
I knew you were going to say that. We'll hold you to it.
Okay, no, I'm just saying, if Carolina's offense keeps going well, just keep an eye on that one. Let's move on. The Eagles took on the Washington football team. They lost 27-17. I had a great Monday going on to Philadelphia Eagles Reddit message board. Oh, they do not like Carson Wentz. They are. You know how we were talking earlier about fan overreaction. They are ready to drive him out of the city.
You know, in preseason, if you said anything against Carson Wentz, then you were essentially attacked on Twitter by Philadelphia fans saying Carson Wentz is great. Leave Carson alone. And all it took was losing to Washington to essentially, eradicate that. And I'm going to say I called it. I really wish I had a little bit more conviction in myself. I kind of saw this coming enough to certainly say that the plus 6 points was definitely in play. And I think, I did say that this had a big red mark around it as a big upset.
No, you did. You did say that to me. I think you said it to me privately as well. You were quite adamant on the Washington one. So
the only kind of question mark was Dwayne Haskins, and through 1.5, 2 quarters, that was definitely not the case. It was good of Washington to spot them 17 points. So it was good of Philly to spot Washington 17 points, and then just allow them to kind of absolutely destroy them in the second half. So. That front seven was good. There was questions of the secondary. They really, really stepped up. And so, Ron Rivera gets his first win. And true or false as well. True or false, Washington football team stays their name forever.
No, I think they're already looking at the Red Wolves. I think that's a favourite.
As long as they don't change the colour scheme, I think they've found a kind of a winning brand as far as that. I thought they looked good on Sunday, a hell of a lot better than they have in the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah,
anyway.
I do like there's something about the football team. It's a bit of a throwback.
Philadelphia, though, one thing that was a difficulty was their lack of production from wide receiver last year, and the emergence of Greg Ward. Well, Greg Ward was their leading receiver in targets and catches again at the weekend. That's a little bit worrying. I mean, they got Jalen Reagor on a deep bomb, and they got Deshaun Jackson twice, but they couldn't get the ball to him after 7 attempts. So Dallas Goedert looks as though he's going to be the main tight end there going forward, and they're going to phase Zach Ertz out, given that I think he's having a bit of contractual difficulties. So their problems for a wide receiver tight end still exist. And I think it's going to be something to keep an eye on for Philly over the initial part of the season.
Well, you've also got all the injuries that they experienced to the offensive line this week as well. That's
the fact that Lane. I mean, I made the prediction before Lane Johnson was out, but the minute Lane Johnson was out, I was like, "That's it." And then they were winning 17-0. I was like, "Right, you're an idiot, Dan." And I was like, "No, you're right at the end, so it's fine."
Okay, so let's move on. Again, this was one that I was wildly off on. I thought Miami could actually beat New England straight up, never mind against the spread. And Miami lost 11-21. Obviously a very different New England offense than what we'd seen before with Brady, although I would love to see Brady running the read option. That would be... Maybe they could have done that in his last game. That would have been just Bill Belichick sentencing him to death. But this is another one I don't want to overreact to this game. I want to see how Josh McDaniels evolves over the coming weeks, especially with them playing the Seahawks in week 2. And I want to see what they do this week. But a good result for New England. Miami, maybe in my eyes, a little bit disappointing. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick went back to being Ryan Fitzpatrick.
0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions is pretty much standard Fitzpatrick game, despite the fact that you hope that he throws for 300 plus and is exciting. But I think we maybe had a little bit of rose-tinted glasses when it came to Miami and how they were going to start the season. But let's calm down about the Patriots. I know I am one of the biggest coolers in relation to the Patriots, but what we said was that they would come out with a way to play to Newton's strengths, and we talked about how the Chargers were running a cadence and their new first round pick that wasn't able to kind of grasp that. Well, the Patriots have gone the complete opposite way in installing this new offense for Cam Newton. They said, right, we'll get rid of our cadence. We're not doing it. How do you want to call the cadence, Cam? That's the kind of little things that teams, when they're bringing new players in, do to make them comfortable. And saying, no, you're the leader of the offense. We're going to take it from you. How do you want to call the cadence? And they go with it like that. The other thing is, first play off the books. What did they run? Taking a power IV read, exactly what we broke down on Cam Newton's focused episode, and thereafter they did exactly what we said: short downish situations, and get Cam Newton running the ball, because he certainly was, not turning the lights off in relation to passing the ball down the field. He only threw for 155 yards. But if they are going to be this kind of ground and pound and just get a few dink and dunks from Cam, then it could be the way forward. But again, it's Miami. It's the first game of the season. If they had blown Miami out and were scored 6 touchdowns, I'd maybe say let's reassess how we're viewing the Patriots. But they go to Seattle next week, and I think that's going to be a completely different story.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things from this game as well is that Cam never threw outside the hashes this game. None of his attempts. I
think I saw that from one of your fancy charts.
Yeah. So obviously I think that's got to change, because you've got to keep the defenses honest. But it's one of the reasons why I like the Patriots, is because they're not tied to a system. What we've harped on from the beginning is you build to your quarterback's strengths. And this is exactly what they're doing. So another one that it will be fun to see how they go. Packers Vikings, we're going to talk about in a little bit more depth, so we'll come back to that one. Same with the Colts and the Jaguars and the Bears and the Lions. Let's skip up to the Raiders Panthers. Raiders 34, Panthers 30. Josh Jacobs, absolutely phenomenal day at the office, 3 touchdowns. I think the Panthers are going to be that bad team that are just annoying and always there and never really get blown out. That's my overreaction from week 1.
Yeah, well, I was worried about the Raiders defense. I said Raiders will score 30 plus points. That won't be a difficulty. It's all about the defense, and it does not appear as though the defense seems to have gotten better at all. Certainly after week 1, it's a rebuilding Carolina team. Runs through Teddy Bridgewater, runs through Christian McCaffrey, and it was really annoying to see that the Vegas weren't able to kind of put it away and actually be in a position where they needed a strange play call at the end of the game from Carolina to actually get the win. So let's not pat Las Vegas on the back for stopping a 4th and 1 and getting the win. That ball should not be in Alex Armada's hands. It should be in Christian McCaffrey's, or it should be Teddy Bridgewater dictating where it goes on a short play. So no, Vegas defense is still a big question mark.
Next up, we've got the Jets took on the Bills. Jets lost 17-27. I don't really want to touch this game because I think the Jets are just the worst team in football. They showed nothing all day.
They're trash. Just trash. That's the end of it.
Okay. Next up, Browns at Ravens. Lamar is good. He's really, really fucking good.
Can we just take a moment for you to say that +8 was too big a number?
Yeah.
I told you it was going to be a blowout, and it was, and they didn't really do much for the rest of the fourth quarter. Lamar's passing it's quite clear that what they're doing is they're putting receivers vertically down the field and getting them on stop routes between 15 to 20 yards. There was lots of kind of spacing concepts, but deep spacing concepts throughout the game. I had a difficulty with my Game Pass, so I managed to watch pretty much the majority of 2.5 quarters of this, and it was quite clear that that's what they were doing from their passing game. In addition to the run game, I was surprised that Dobbins got the majority of carries, But then again, they're obviously wanting to transition to him as being the lead back. So I thought they would take a little bit more time to kind of ease him in actual game situations, but they gave him the snaps. Maybe not necessarily the carries, but they gave him the snaps. He repaid their trust and got a couple of touchdowns. So I know that you're keen to see his development.
Yeah, no, I think that was an excellent pickup by the Ravens. But honestly, the thing that impressed me the most was Lamar. Again, digging into a little bit more of the advanced stats. We were making the old joke about Derek Carr. If you need 7 yards, Derek Carr will get you 7 yards. If you need 10 yards, Derek Carr will get you 7 yards. Lamar Jackson, his air yard average, 10.1 yards per pass.
Take it every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think what impressed me more about this as well is it seemed like they were happy to put this on Lamar's arm rather than the run game to start with. And I think again, I don't want to overreact to this because I think the Browns were just awful. But I really think he showed what he is as a passer. I think this was a very efficient and great game by Lamar. And I really hope this development continues.
I'm a Ravens homer, so I've kind of set my stall out. I'm not going to kind of fall over gushing about it, but incidentally, Derek Carr averaged 8 yards a pass today, so you're not far off with that 7 yards a pop.
No, sir. Derek Carr, he averaged 8 yards a pass, but if you look at where he actually threw the ball to the wide receiver, it's 3.7.
Okay, right.
This is my new stat because I like this stat because it shows you how much work your wide receivers actually have to do. But we'll go on to it a bit more. Yeah.
But no, they have a severe problem with OBJ and Baker Mayfield. And I'm not talking about, getting on the same page or stuff like. They're asking OBJ to do things that I just don't think, was what made him successful in New York. Stefanski's obviously got a certain offense. Again, it doesn't seem as though Baker's been able to take to it. We had a segment where we talked about how Alex Van Pelt was dealing with Baker's footwork. It looked worse than ever on Sunday. The Baker Mayfield's got real problems this year, I think.
I've been camped out on my Baker isn't good take. I think this is when I cash in those chips.
No. Week one's not when you cash in your chips. We differentiate in our takes, but we're kind of aligned similarly, and that's I think that this is a terrible offense for Baker Mayfield to be in his third year. Okay,
we did both align on that. We didn't think this was a good fit,
and so therefore it's not going to go well for him, and that seems to have played out at a minimum of week one. Right, he was a little bit unlucky for one of the interceptions, but we'll leave it at that. And thereafter, they're not using Odell Beckham in a way which is conducive to him having success. It's just a really, really tough time. I think there's a lot of square pegs, round holes in Cleveland, and it's not going to go well, I think. So we'll keep an eye on it, but it certainly isn't a good start this year.
Yeah, I mean, the rumours have already come out today that they're looking to trade OBJ.
And I think they should. I think for both that offense and for OBJ, I think there should just be a parting of the ways now. The GM that brought him in has gone. It's the head coach at the time is gone. It's just, I think it would be better if they could get a second, they should take a second.
I think what the Browns need to do is become a run team. I think they need to fully lean into that identity and just limit the amount that Baker can influence the game with his arm. I think he's not suited to this offense, so you have to just rely on those backs. And they're two excellent backs, so it's not a bad strategy to just build your entire identity around pounding the football with those two guys. But we'll see what happens through the course of the season. Last one from the Sunday games, before we start to talk about games in a bit more detail. Seahawks, Atlanta. Seahawks just absolutely manhandled Atlanta in this game, 38-25. Russell Wilson was fantastic, absolutely fantastic in this game. the Seahawks Twitter has been screaming out for, let Russ cook, let him go back and throw it. And this is the most that they've actually thrown it on first downs.
First and second, yeah.
Yeah, first and second down. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I just think that Russell Wilson is a good quarterback, and this is what happens when you let him be a good quarterback.
Just please don't say cook. I can't stand that phrase. I really don't know why. It's just one of these things that irks me. It's a pet peeve. Just, Anyway, I have a difficulty with certain hashtags, and that's just something that seems to have appeared. But between Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan, you had 88 pass attempts. He had 88 pass attempts on Sunday, and Matt Ryan threw for 450. I mean, they were just airing the ball everywhere, both of them. And so, again, I don't know what Matt Ryan has to do when he's throwing for 450 yards and 2 touchdowns. And it's a difficult one for Matt Ryan, because I just think, again, my take on Dan Quinn is that he'll be out before the end of the season, and the defense just can't keep up. But that's not to take away from the fact that Russell Wilson really kind of set out his MVP campaign just to spite me. Seahawks good. Let's see how they do in division against maybe the 49ers, but can't take away anything from what the Seahawks did against Atlanta. Okay,
so now we're going to start talking about 4 games in a bit more depth. Where do you want to start with, Dan? Do you want to do Colts, Jags, Packers, Vikings, or Chicago, Detroit, or the Texans, Kansas City?
Let's start off with Colts, Jags.
Okay, Colts, Jags. This is the reason why I wanted to talk about this air yards. Colts lost to the Jags 20-27. My MVP bet for Gardner Minshew looks bang on. Hopefully bet 365. Just want to pay out now. I'm happy to take it. The reason why I was bringing up the air yards is I think sometimes with quarterbacks you can get a lot of empty calories when you look at the final lines. If you look at Philip Rivers' final line, like conventional stats, he was 36 of 46 for 363 yards, which breaks down to about 6.3 yards per attempt. If you look at his actual air yards, which is just where the ball is caught dead, and this is all done using the AWS metrics. So it's the little receiver chips that you see on the guy's shoulder pads. They're able to track the ball really efficiently there. Philip Rivers threw for 151 air yards, so about 4.2 yards per pass. That's pretty much all. The majority of his yards came in yards after the catch. I don't think that's sustainable. From watching that game, I thought he looked like he did last year, which is not a great quarterback. I'm going to pass it over to you to tear this to shreds.
Well, I'm not going to tear it to shreds. What I'm going to say is that you got to understand that essentially I text you halfway through the Colts game and said this is the most Philip Rivers way to lose a game ever, and it's essentially what he's done is he's brought that style of play from San Diego to the Colts, which is really surprising to me that the coaching staff have allowed that to happen. I mean, he had 46 pass attempts on Sunday. The the Jaguars had 45 plays total. You don't win. You don't win with Philip Rivers throwing the ball that amount of time in conjunction. Because I'm going to agree with what you say. For the way that Philip Rivers plays with passing off to the banks and the stick routes and such like, and getting the ball out quick is an extension of the run game. To me, okay, he has lost that zip in his arm and he can't get it. He can't get it down the field the way he used to. Which is not, it's not a terrible thing. It's not something that, can't be overcome. But when you have Philip Rivers throwing the ball 46 times a game, it becomes a big problem. You have a brand new running back in Jonathan Taylor. he was, relatively explosive in the kind of one of these little kind of dump off passes that he was getting. Not so much in the run game, but I think that will come. I was really surprised that with the offensive line they've got, that this was the way that the game played out in Jacksonville. So I'm not worried. Again, I think that they still will win the division. Especially if the Titans continue in their form and the Texans continue in their form. I think, the Colts will get it together. But, the lack of balance in the Colts game on Sunday was a real difficulty for me.
I agree. They need to work on the run game. I don't know why they aren't leaning more heavily into it, especially with that, offensive line. It could be, obviously, Marlon Mack went down with that Achilles injury. Maybe they don't want to just put it all on Taylor's back straight away. But Frank Reich's a good coach. He needs to, I think he's going to be doing a lot of looking at this game. And I think he's going to come to the same realisation. You can't ask Philip Rivers to throw the ball 46 times. I mean, he has no zip. It's a shot put.
Let's not talk about his action, because his action is essentially the same, but the velocity on the throw is not what it was.
Yeah.
And you got to be wary of the cult of personality, because Philip Rivers, for as much as he does not swear, he is, he can be a bit of a character, okay? And that kind of force of nature of Philip Rivers being on your offense, and he's only there for a year. Whether he's unhappy or not, you should still be the head coach of the team, calling the plays and making sure that they're in a position to win. And if you're essentially adopting, well, let's just have the way that Philip Rivers played with the Chargers last year, that's not going to get you to win games. And I thought that would not be the position in Indianapolis going forward. If this becomes a trend, then I'm going to severely regret calling them for the division, because that's not, in no way did I anticipate them playing that way.
I just think, I don't understand why they went for Rivers, because I still think Brissett's a better quarterback than Rivers.
I can't really get on board with that, but I don't think it's a significant increase. But what I do is that there's a certain security with Philip Rivers, and look, he completed 78% of his passes, albeit you'll say that the majority of the pass, the yards came after catch. But I think it's still a better air yards than Derek Carr. So
yeah,
it's all incremental, and again, it's week one. So I would. I hope that this is just a bit of an anomaly. They had a game plan. They should have adapted and got out of it, and they didn't. And all of a sudden, after an interception and a couple of drops, they found themselves down. And I don't know whether this is a team that should be, that is going to be comfortable playing 10 points down. I think they're built, to me, to be able to get a lead and then keep it. And with that offensive line they have, I'm really surprised at the limited amounts of production they managed to get out of the backs.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think they'll struggle if they are down. If they come up against a team who can get a fast, explosive start, like say a Baltimore, because Baltimore will beat the brakes off you in the first quarter. I don't think the Colts are built in their current form to come back in that type of situation. I think they need to play with a lead, and they need to control the clock. They're going to be like a less bells and whistles version of what the Patriots will be this year.
Oof, that's really low. That's really low expectations, because again, I don't think there's a single bell, and not even a toot coming out of New England. I think it's kind of old school football, Just
no, but I mean, with a lot of
get 10 bodies in front of Cam Newton, and on short yardage, and make them stop a 6'6", 250 quarterback.
You had a lot of the orbit motions with duels, and they were moving places about, and they can use them in the zone read to help the run game. You can't use Philip Rivers with a read option with Philip Rivers. But it's the same kind of strategy. You just want to control the clock, lean on your run game, and get you through, and just hope that your defense is good enough to keep the scores low.
Well, the main thing is obviously is that when you're chasing, you need to push the ball down to those 15 to 20 yard routes consistently. And again, that's not what Philip Rivers has really done for the last couple of years. And again, if we were talking about efficiency being methodical, I think that would be more the way that Indianapolis should be looking at going and grinding things out and play action and allowing them to be able to deal with it that way.
Where shall we head to next, Dan?
But I still don't think we've given enough love to Minshew in the way that he's played, and I think Jay Gruden needs to get a lot of credit. He's done well with quarterbacks when he's been in OC position before, but these weren't he wasn't layups either. It wasn't total dinks. He was putting the ball on lines into tight spaces when he had to, and he is playing how I thought Baker Mayfield would play in the pros. Maybe not obviously to kind of 19 of 20 kind of consistency, but having that awareness, being able to the vision and being able to understand where things were playing out on the field, and then just be able to kind of use that touch accuracy, even though he didn't have a great a cannon for an arm, and get the ball where it needed to go. So all power to him. I love the story. I love the way that he plays, and I can't quite believe. I mean, it must be the only setup in the NFL just now where there's a 6th round quarterback and an undrafted free agent starting for an offense, and they've won a game. I mean, they've won a game. That's not unheard of, but certainly for the Jags and the rest of the positions they had, I wouldn't have seen that coming. So that was the biggest surprise to me of the whole weekend, was this game.
And I'll throw in another advanced stat for you. Gardner Minshew led the league this week in plus minus for completion percentage over expected completion percentage.
I fell asleep halfway through you saying that.
Yeah.
So,
so there's your actual completion percentage. This is all stuff that you can get from NFL for free, and it's it's again to do with the trackers that they put on all these guys with their GPS. Basically, they're now able to look at all the routes that the wide receivers run and compare that in a model versus those routes being run again and how many have been completed. So they come up with an expected completion percentage based on all the passing routes that a quarterback has during a day. So Minshew was expected to complete 78% of his passes. He completed 94. So he's got a plus minus of 16.4 because he was 16 percentage points better than what he should have been. Lamar Jackson was
right. No.
second.
You're not getting to talk anymore. This is the worst analytics stat I think I've ever heard in my life. So
it's
not.
No.
You can.
No, it's
that's
not.
just nonsense.
It's not.
So pre-game he was expected to throw 78%.
No, not pre-game. This is like so basically after the game, they download the data from the wide receivers and they look at all the routes that the wide receivers have run.
Nonsense. I'm calling a veto and using that stat ever again until you are able to explain it to me in a way that matters. Sorry.
That is a good stat because it's not like a PFF grade. It's an actual analytics. It's like measurable data.
But it's on throws that he didn't make. It's on routes to throws he didn't make.
It's on it's not. It's on the routes that he completed.
Right. Explain this to me. Explain this to me for the next episode because I really, really can't understand what you're talking about just now.
Right. Okay. Let's go to Packers at Vikings. This is a game that, when it comes to the off-season, we need to set a reminder because we'll go through the games and we'll look at the scores and then we'll say, this was actually a pretty close game. The Vikings played them relatively close. And this game was never really in doubt. The Packers just absolutely stomped all over the Vikings in this one. This was, again, we don't want to overreact. The Vikings have a very young secondary. I think they'll get better as the year progresses. But I don't think the Vikings were in this game at all.
No, I mean, it was El Pumpy. It was a pumping. It was an absolute doing over. And we're all looking foolish for saying that Aaron Rodgers was going to just lie back and, die in Matt LaFleur's system. There's a number of things, okay? The wide receivers that they had played out their skins on Sunday. And that is probably in conjunction with the fact that Minnesota now has a severe problem with their corners. They are not getting anywhere near the play that they expected from their corners either last year or this year. And if that continues, they're going to have serious problems. So one of the things we should kind of just have a quick look at is the kind of breakdown. And the difficulty is that this game was done well before the 10 minutes to go in the fourth. So there might be some garbage time which might skew it, certainly from the box score. And this is where we would have to rely on your analytics stuff to be able to kind of, bring it back. But they passed the ball 44 times and ran the ball 32 times. I mean, that's still an incredible amount of plays for an absolute doing. And Aaron Jones, they managed to get 158 yards on the ground, despite the fact that Tim Boyle took 2 knee downs and lost 2 yards. But, that's just being pernickety. They seem to add a few more elements to the offense, more conducive to the Sean McVay style rather than the Shanahan style, which was what we were expecting. So they were a little bit more dynamic than I expected. There's a lot more touch passes, which people watched our episode on West Virginia. They'll understand where that comes from. And I was not expecting this performance from the Green Bay Packers against the Vikings, and I can't believe I let you talk me into the Vikings winning it, especially on a 3-point spread.
This was, other than the Miami pick that I had, this was probably the one that I'm most ashamed of.
I'm glad you used the word ashamed, because if you didn't, I was.
No, next time I say I want to pick against Aaron Rodgers, and especially a slighted Aaron Rodgers, slap me. Like, that is just, no, Aaron Rodgers plays best when he's pissed off.
I really don't want that narrative to be true, though. It just seems so lazy.
I know it does seem lazy. It certainly does, and I don't like to buy into all this kind of these media-driven narratives. But at the same time, I really think that's true. I think that's what's happened with Aaron Rodgers. He's got something to prove this year. Last year, his play wasn't Aaron Rodgers level, and they still finished up 13-3. So I don't want to overreact to this game as well. At the same time, I don't know how much this was just a savvy veteran QB being able to pick apart, a very inexperienced secondary. I was really impressed with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers.
I think one of the things that was quite telling was pretty much the complete and utter lack of pressure they got on Aaron Rodgers. I said that they would get, some Zimmer pressures, they would dial it up, they would make him uncomfortable and such. And I think in total, they had 2 QB hits, and that was about it. So, yeah. I'm sure that PFF would give me something a bit better for the pass rush.
I was looking at it earlier today because I was trying to figure out even how many hurries and hits they actually had, and there was nothing really generated. And it was a very disappointing performance, I think, all in, especially with what they had, invested. What you get in Gokwe, you're expecting, a little bit more, and unfortunately,
well, it's first week after being traded late in training camp, and such like. Let's not, be too unkind to him about it. But if the problems, in the NFL, 2 things are true. If you can't affect the quarterback and your DBs can't cover, you're in a whole world of hurt. And it's going to lie. If that's going to be something that is going to affect a Mike Zimmer defense all season long,
yeah,
that scowl on the sidelines is going to get worse and worse and worse.
Sorry, I just pulled this up so that we actually have it. They had 5 hurries and 2 hits on Aaron Rodgers the whole game.
Yeah, over 44 pass attempts. I mean, that's just nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, I mean, I don't. That's not. If you can't get to Aaron Rodgers, then it's what you do. You're kind of leaving your secondary out there to just be sitting ducks. It's one of these ones you don't want to overreact to this one game. There could be a bit of a rebound and back to normality next week. I thought it was also quite interesting how they really didn't want Kirk Cousins involved in the first half. The Vikings really went on that run.
Well, and that's what Zimmer wants. He wants that run game, and he trusts his defense to do its job. And with Kubiak being able to kind of manufacture some yards on those boots, you don't need Kirk Cousins to be a superstar, even though everybody wants him to be, with the fact he's getting all this money guaranteed. But it was a little bit strange that they're. I can't remember what their first down passing rate was, but I'm pretty sure it'll be extremely low.
This is how that team is built, and like you say, it's built around the run and then coming off that play action pass to try and push the ball down the field and generate chunk plays. But I don't want to overreact to this one. I'd pick the Vikings to win the division.
I think it's my only silver lining. I'm pretty sure that everybody apart from Kansas City that I picked to win the division lost.
So
apart from Baltimore, but again, that doesn't count.
Yeah, no, we're not counting them. Are you done with the Packers and Vikings?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, let's jump back to the opener, Houston at Kansas City. There's a couple of things here. First of all, I was really happy with Deshaun Watson. I've kind of said that the one area that I really wanted him to progress in was getting rid of the ball quickly, making better decisions when the first read isn't there, come off it and go to your second read, take the check down, don't hang around too late. I thought he did that really well against Kansas City. The right side of the line was absolutely horrendous. Frank Clark had his way with them. He just absolutely picked the two guys apart. That is a big concern. The defensive strategy was getting ripped apart a bit by Texans fans online. I thought it was actually a pretty solid game plan. They kept the two high safety, prevented Mahomes from taking deep shots down the field. He was getting the ball out quick. He was taking everything short, and that was allowing the Texans to come up, make tackles where they could. The only downside was that it turns out that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is pretty good, and the Texans didn't really have anything to stop that. And it was also the first time that the Chiefs have ran more than they passed in the Andy Reid era. So it was a good wrinkle for the Chiefs, I think. I think adding Helaire has given them another dimension. And I don't want to overreact to week one, but I think this is a fun new wrinkle that the Chiefs have. And I'm looking forward to see how they use them going forward. And I hope they all stay healthy. But that Chiefs line looked good as well.
Osemele just was kind of absolutely destroying the interior D-line of Houston, left, right, and centre. But think about Edwards-Helaire, or the Fresh Prince of Helaire, as somebody referred to him the other day. So I might just call him the Fresh Prince from now on, seeing as I can't sometimes mess up Helaire. Is that he was really good at running inside zone duo at LSU, and he showed that he was able to make those same reads again here, where they were being very specific of when he was running outside runs to basically kind of make sure not even just D gap. I mean, this was EFG gap. We are getting it outside, and you are running outside that. We were giving you no other way to kind of think about it. He was a little bit hesitant and not as good on the kind of gap power plays, the gap scheme plays that they were putting in. So, but swings around. Sorry, let's not be too pernickety. Good in the pass game. Really good when he was schemed up. Schemed up the right run plays for him, and that's why KC are who they are, and the brain trust of Eric Reid and Bieniemy are there. They've got some absolute filthy screens on double action, and motion was just really, really good, and I even tweeted it out. Kansas seemed to be, if Kansas can win games the way that they want to by running the ball, and being balanced, and they don't need Patrick Mahomes to put on his back every single week, that is a scary, scary proposition. But again, Houston, not the greatest team. One thing I say about Deshaun Watson is that he was pressured 14 times and he only completed one pass through out of all of those 14, pressures.
Yeah.
So that's not good. A lot of the balls hit the dirt, and his second half might be a bit better than the first. But are you still going to stick with this idea that DeAndre Hopkins leaving is going to be a good thing for him? How long are you going to hold on to that? Is that a hill you're going to die on?
It's not. I don't think it's a good thing, because one of the other issues with one of the negatives from this was the wide receivers couldn't create any separation from the Chiefs DBs. So even though he was getting hurried, he was having to throw into really tight coverage. We've gone out, we've got all these burners, but nobody was getting open. There was no initial separation at all. I think it's good for his development, because I think DeAndre had become a crutch, and a really good crutch that you should lean on. And I don't think it's a good thing when you get rid of one of the best wide receivers. I think this is something that they should have been working on and preaching with him going forward, but it is what it is. Deshaun made an improvement in an area that I wanted to see an improvement in him, and now it's up to the offensive side to start thinking how they can scheme open, because we've got the Ravens this week. Calais Campbell is going to be licking his lips. If he looks at what Frank Clark did, the Ravens can absolutely emulate it, because against Fulton, they weren't Frank Clark wasn't going into this mad bag of tricks to get through every time. All he was doing was using push-pull.
Can I say, watching the Baltimore game, I've always known that Calais Campbell was a big man, but I tell you what, the fact that he is the biggest man on that Baltimore team is a scary proposition. There was an end zone shot showing how big Calais Campbell is, and he's so imposing. And let's just say, well, shall we have an over under on how many QB hit sacks Calais Campbell gets on Sunday?
I think. I don't want to go too much for sacks, because sacks, there's an element of fortuitous in that. I would say for hits, I think you could be looking at him causing real problems for the Texans. Well, you could probably see him in and around Deshaun at least five to six times this game. I'm that nervous about it, because it got so bad that they were bringing Zach Martin in to double, because Fulton was such a liability. And then that was leaving Howard out on an island. And Howard at right tackle was just as inept. So now you're going to have to ask, can you keep David Johnson in the backfield to protect? I'm not confident at all in this one.
Okay. So it's not good for Houston, but maybe there's some green shoots.
Yeah, I think there's some good things for when we're not playing elite teams. But if we come up against, I think when we start to play these upper echelon teams, I think this just showed how far off we are and where they are. One thing I did want to bring up, though, just circling back to KC, there was some chat about, the Texans pass rush couldn't get to Mahomes at all during the game. Looked into it a little bit further. Patrick Mahomes' average time to throw, 2.35 seconds. I mean, you're not going to get near him when they're getting the ball out that quickly.
He doesn't need it, but again, I don't think Pat Mahomes completed a pass longer than 20 yards this week. Have to look into that, but again, that was a stat that popped out. So, look, high percentage. With the way that teams have been practicing and prepping for this, it could be a lot of teams that won this week had a greater percentage of rushing plays over passing plays in their total amount of plays. One of the things that they might be doing in relation to these pass plays is the high percentage possession passes rather than looking for these shots, given that there's not been a lot of contact, there's not been a lot of there's been no preseason, and so they're just wanting to kind of make sure that they don't put quarterbacks in bad positions, just getting the ball out quick. So it'll be interesting to see if that kind of continues, because as I said, Dak didn't get anything plus 20 yards. Pat Mahomes didn't get anything plus 20 yards. Pretty sure Breeze didn't get anything plus 20 yards. So we'll have to see how this idea of pushing the ball down the field, or not just these short air yards, are affecting all the quarterbacks over the next kind of 5-6 games.
Yeah, it's something that I think we should definitely try and keep an eye on and see how it goes as we progress. Let's wrap up the show then with a look at Chicago at Detroit. Chicago won 27-23. Their win probability going into the fourth quarter, down 17 points, was, I believe, around 2%.
I had one pick. I had one pick to make, and I picked against Trubisky and went Detroit -3 for this week, and buck my life, I just really, really could not believe what was happening in that game. Sorry, I jumped in there.
No, I think we all were mystified by this collapse. The Lions, I mean, they suffered injuries in the secondary, but this was a historic choke job down the stretch. This was unbelievable. It was almost like the offensive play calling, it was like they got confident once they were up by 17 points and thought they could just coast. They didn't really seem to want to push the ball around, and then they did, and then there was the interception. It was just the worst coaching performance I think I've seen.
It was a
excluding
combination.
Adam Gase.
Well, okay. Well, we just would agree that we're not going to talk about the Jets until they become relevant. So don't even say his name. That coach that shall not be named. No, the Detroit fourth quarter is something that is strange, because ordinarily you can place the blame at one side of the ball. For this, it was just both. They've got Adrian Peterson, who's 2 days in the door, and they're giving the most carries to. That's alarming. And they then get away from that when he is, busting off kind of 7-8 yards a clip in the fourth quarter, and I think the second to last drive, and then they try and get cute, and then Stafford takes a sack that he shouldn't do. They attempt a field goal, miss that. That's a turnover, great field position, and let's give Mitchell some dues. He put the ball where it needed to be, and Anthony Miller and others came to be. But when you're a defense and you're giving up 2 touchdowns to Jimmy Graham, have a serious look at yourself. This is not peak Jimmy Graham. You're 5-6 years removed from that. Have a look at yourself and figure out what's going on. Their pass rush has elevated immensely in week 1 from where it was last year, but you've just touched on a stat: average time to throw.
Yeah,
Mitchell Trubisky at 2.86 seconds had the best. Had the most time to throw of any quarterback over a game, other than Taysom Hill for the 2 passes he threw. So let's, and again, that was on a trick play. So there's a serious problem with that defense and pass rush that we've touched on in the preview shows and in the week 1 preview. If that's the way that's going to go, again, I was very, very down on the Lions, very down on Matt Patricia. It then started to kind of come warm back a little bit, thinking that because of Matt Stafford's initial run in last season before he got injured, I thought, they're back. They've got some pieces on offense. They'll be able to kind of win games just with their offense and then get by with an average defense. But this looks like it's going to be 31st in total defense Matt Patricia for the rest of the season, and we must now surely be on a kind of hot seat. When's he getting fired? Watch, because if this performance continues and they collapse like that again, that's nothing but a reflection on the head coach and what he's implementing in that football club.
Well, I mean, there's 2 things I want to bring up on Matt Patricia. Right, first one, Jim Caldwell was sacked after going 9-7.
Oh yeah, and I saw this.
Yeah, Matt Patricia in his career with the Lions has only won 9 games.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
The other one was, did you see his quote after the game? Like, when they were saying, I
listened to nothing that Pat Patricia says. Pat Patricia.
It was, they asked him, like, do you know how to close out games? Do you know how to win games? And it was like, yeah, it was after they blew the fourth quarter. They're obviously asking him about what happened, and then, like, is there something in your coaching that isn't happening enough in the fourth quarter? And then Patricia's response, yeah, I don't think so. I think I got probably one of the biggest plays in the fourth quarter in the history of the NFL. So he's taking credit for that Super Bowl play in New England.
Jesus.
I don't know what better way to end the show than on that bomb.
We can't blacklist every head coach in the NFL and not talk about their team, but Gase and the Jets just absolute dumpster fire. Not talking about them until they're relevant, and Detroit is going that way purely because of our disdain for Matt Patricia. So it is very, very. I mean, he just does everything in his power to be unlikable, doesn't he?
And I find him the Peter Griffin of the NFL. Just incompetence.
Yeah, he's harmless.
Yeah, he's harmless.
Matt Patricia's only won 9 games over 3 years.
Yeah, he's fun. We're not Lions fans, so we don't have to suffer this pain. So for us, we're looking around going, "Oh, this is funny." Poor people like our friend George Fell. This is going to end up putting him in an early grave. I think he's not long for the NFL after this season, and I guess it's just when do we think he gets fired?
Is his next job going to be defensive consultant at Alabama?
I don't even think Saban would touch him.
Well, it's just, to be fair, Saban takes on a lot of kind of people who have been let go from other jobs in poor circumstances. So he's got a good relationship with Belichick. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next time saw him with next time.
The rumours out of New England were that Belichick was not a fan of Patricia. There was a lot of that buzz.
His MIT degree only takes him so far.
Yeah. Okay. Let's wrap that up, this episode, with our Matt Patricia hate. We will be back later this week with our NFL pick show. We'll be going to 2 shows a week as best we can for the NFL season. So those should be coming out Wednesdays and Thursdays for you. So you should have our pick show just before the Thursday night game and our review show on the Wednesdays. Okay. And we will see you on Thursday.